Welcome to the Joy of Sunflowers podcast. We release podcasts here, in part and in full, on the Joy of Sunflowers website. The Joy of Sunflowers podcast is about sisterhood through infertility and pregnancy loss. We cover a range of topics including fertility, pregnancy after loss, and so much more. I speak with a range of people, including wellness professionals, medical experts, and beautiful mamas. The aim of this podcast is to bring you information and experiences that will validate and equip you for whatever season you find yourself in right now. Hi, Jennifer. Welcome to the Joy of Sunflowers. Thank you so much for joining me and everyone here. Please introduce yourself a little bit more.
Sure. So thank you, first of all, for organizing this and for inviting me. It is a true honor. Hi, I'm Jen. I am a fertility coach. So I support women who are struggling to get pregnant, who are going through IVF, who are going through pregnancy loss. I also have a community for women who are pregnant after infertility or loss. And I came to this career or business as a result of my own experience with infertility and pregnancy loss, which involved 7 years, 9 IVF cycles. We had one baby via a surrogacy relationship. We had 2 miscarriages and a natural pregnancy at the end. So I feel like my experience went through the whole gamut of emotions that you can go through. So now, I really needed the support. Like, I think the emotional support just isn't there for what we are going through, and people don't talk about it, and we go through this in silence. So I really wanted to be a voice and be what I needed on this journey as well. So it led me to what I'm doing today, which I'm, very grateful for.
Wonderful. And I'm sure so many women are grateful to have you in their corner and feel like they have someone who understands, because you're right, that is the toughest part of going through this journey. You feel very alone. Can we start at the beginning of your story so people know what you've been through, and they can kind of get a bit more understanding of how you came to this sort of part of your life?
Yeah, absolutely. So how much time do you have? So I'm I guess to understand, a bit about me, I am your typical type A personality. I am very structured. I am very driven. So when I met my husband and we got married, we started trying for a baby on our honeymoon. I was 33 years old at the time. And I had been on contraception for 16 years beforehand. And I just had this idea that I would go off the pill and completely just get pregnant. So when we were struggling, it came as a bit of a shock for me. So 6 months into our marriage and into our trying to conceive journey, we went to, our doctor. My head in my hands, and I was just baffled. I didn't know what to do. So they ran a whole bunch of tests. My husband didn't have particularly great sperm. I wasn't getting a cycle, a regular cycle. So we just went down the path of IVF, and the journey that ensued beyond that was crazier than I could have imagined. So I didn't question it. We just went down the path of IVF. As I said, I'm very much, I have a problem. Here is a solution. I hadn't done a whole heap of research into it, but I just wanted to be off it. I wanted my baby in my arms, and we just went down that path. So halfway through our cycle, we discovered that I wasn't getting a lining on my uterus, so there would be no point in going through the full IVF cycle. So we finished it. We got some embryos, and then for the next about year or so, we just went from place to place trying to work out how to solve my problem of no lining on my uterus. And, we tried all natural therapies, we tried homeopaths, we did acupuncture, I changed diets, you name it, I did it. I went and saw fertility specialists. We, Viagra pessaries and exploratory surgery. So I really became this lab rat for a whole year. And it was really devastating and frustrating at the same time. And eventually our fertility specialist that we were going to took us to the side and said, there's no other way that you're going to have a baby of your own but via a surrogate. So that was a really bitter pill to swallow. I'm, amongst my other beautiful personality traits, I am also I like control. And this was me having to hand over control of something to someone else. And up until after 2 years of struggling, I wanted to feel pregnant. I had craved it for so long. But we do what we do. And about 6 months earlier, my sister-in-law, my husband's sister, had actually said offhand, if you wanted me to have a baby for you, I'll have one. She had 2 sons. She loved being pregnant. So when the doctor broke that news to us, we promptly got on the phone to her and said, were you serious? Will you have a baby for us? And she said yes. So we started going down the path of surrogacy. And once again, I just thought that it would be simple. We had embryos, we had someone who was going to be able to carry children because she had before. And it took us another 2 years. And we did round after round of IVF, like sometimes getting healthy embryos, sometimes not. We did transfers, some resulted in absolutely nothing. And eventually she got pregnant. And that was just the most amazing, we had never gotten pregnant before. But unfortunately, she had a miscarriage, which was such a weird experience because I wasn't physically going through it, but it was my baby and we had taken so long. So there was also that element of guilt on top of it, that we had done this to her, that she had never experienced a miscarriage and the creation of her own family. But now, because of us, she was a member of this club that no one wants to be a part of. So it was a really hard thing to navigate. And my husband, his sister and I, we just kind of went our separate ways to try to grieve our way through this. It was such a weird level of grief. And when you've gone through a miscarriage, it's not like when someone passes away, what to do and people support you through it and everything. Like a miscarriage is hard enough, but when it's not yours in your actual body. So it was just this whole mixture of emotions. So anyway, we rallied, we got through it. And I think the biggest fear that I had was that she wouldn't want to try again after that trauma. But she's a trooper, and she said that she wanted to try again. And we had another couple of cycles, and eventually she got pregnant again. And this one stuck. And so Luca is now 8 years old. I cannot believe it. So 2 weeks after Luca was born, after 5 years of going through this ridiculous struggle to get him, I got pregnant naturally myself, which was just shocking in itself. We had never imagined that. There was also the hard conversation that we had to go back to my sister-in-law and go, oops, sorry, turns out we can do it ourselves after all. So it was just the most amazing experience. But 6 weeks later, I carriage, and it was a completely, as you can imagine, different experience. It was happening to my body, and I don't think I ever really appreciated what our surrogate had gone through in terms of, there's the emotional side of things that I had experienced, but the physical symptoms was just something that you can't escape from. And it doesn't happen quickly. It happens slowly. And it's painful emotionally and physically. So I think it gave me not an appreciation, but it made me realize, wow, she went through that for us. And so, yeah, I had to deal with my own miscarriage. Meanwhile, I had, a newborn baby as well. And so there was also that mixture of emotions where I felt like I had been robbed of that newborn phase that I had worked so hard for. So that was really hard as well. But we do what we've got to do. And I rallied. And I had that little seed of hope in the back of my mind. Up until then, I had never been able to get pregnant, but I was like, okay, maybe I can do this. Maybe my body can do this. And so we were not really trying, but I was really trying. I knew exactly what my cycle was doing, but we weren't putting as much pressure on ourselves. And 6 months later, I got pregnant naturally again. And now we have Sophie, who is 6 years old. So it's like the craziest story you never would have imagined. I even wrote a book about it called The Injustice of Infertility. It's just the wildest ride. And, you know, I would never have chosen that path. I don't think that we would ever choose to go through so much pain and suffering. But now, you know, I'm on the other side and I can look back and go, I can see the moments of the learnings, the things that came out of it, and now I can use that experience to support more women who are going through it as well, because it really is a learned experience, isn't it?
Yeah. And I think it's important to kind of see it not in a positive light, because obviously, you know, going through all this stuff is so hard, and we all kind of are like, well, it's not positive, I'm not happy about it, but it changes you, and it grows you, and you become a more compassionate, more grateful, and just more understanding person through going through it. And although we wish we hadn't gone through it, we wouldn't be the people we are today without. There's like a silver lining type thing from it. But yeah, we kind of have to accept who we are and accept those beautiful changes. They're still beautiful, even though they came from something not very nice.
Yeah, absolutely. It is about, you know, being able to experience the gratitude and say at the same time, you know what, this really sucks.
Yeah. And it's okay to say it sucks. It does suck. There's no sugarcoating it. I was going to say, how did your surrogate kind of go? I know you said you sort of went your separate ways for a bit after, but did she talk to you about it after that?
No, to be honest with you, and even today, you know, she's my sister-in-law and she gave us a baby, and we've never really spoken about, you know, what she was experiencing. We never really healed together. And it wasn't until I wrote my book that, like, I even started acknowledging some of the stuff that we had gone through. And I was asking her questions about her experience, but I'd never really done that before. And I think that sometimes with grief, we compartmentalize it because we just are not in a space to be able to pull that out and look at it. And I think that we are under the misguided assumption that if I can just get pregnant again, then it's going to wipe away all of the grief and the suffering. And unfortunately, pregnancy is not the cure for the grief that we go through for, you know, when we experience a loss. But it wasn't until, you know, I started writing my book that I actually asked the questions of her. And you know, there were, like, I still carry a lot of guilt as a result of that as well. Don't get me wrong, I would do the same thing over again to get this result, but there's still an element of, you know, it doesn't feel good when, you know, even though it wasn't our direct actions and we could never have foreseen, and she was a grown adult and made her own choices, it's still not a great feeling when someone goes through an excruciating amount of pain and suffering and trauma because of something that you wanted and you gained from it.
I think it's important to always look at these things, you know, from a whole perspective, and you can't look at it until after the fact, right? Until you've got that foresight. And obviously, you know, I don't think she would look at it and look at your 8-year-old and be like, yeah, I wish I hadn't done that. You know what I mean? I think there would be that kind of, I suffered, and, you know, we lost that first one, but, you know, I helped make that happen. I helped make this happen, and this child would not be here without me. And I think that, although you feel bad, maybe she actually feels like really, really good about the fact that she actually helped you and actually gave you that child. Because if you think about it, when you give someone a gift, you feel so good. Like you feel better.
Random acts of kindness. And that's what it was. It was a random act of kindness because she was doing this out of the goodness of her heart. And, you know, in Australia, surrogacy isn't like, you can't do it for commercial gain at all. Like we couldn't pay her for it, which I just, you know, don't even get me started on that. You know, like everyone else gets paid, but the person who is actually taking the most risk, like our doctors got paid, the lawyers got paid, like everyone else got paid, but the person who had the most to lose and who experienced the most pain out of it, which, you know, it's just.
I'd find other ways, you know, like here's all your groceries for the week. Here's this. You want to go on holidays?
We were creative, but I won't say anything.
No, you have to. And I think it is very backwards. I understand why it's there, because it is to try and protect women from, you know, selling their bodies in that way. But when you have someone who's going, you know, I'm a fully grown adult and I'm making this decision and I want to help these people, I think that needs to be honored. And I do think there needs to be a bit more education out there, like so that there's more of an understanding and that kind of, okay, these things can still happen when you go through, you know, so you have that kind of understanding, because obviously you would have gone through it going, well, yeah, surrogacy, we're going to have a baby. And that's what everyone thinks, right? You just think all these different things. Well, oh, you just have a baby. You know, surely I don't even have to think about miscarriage. But of course, anyone can go for a miscarriage at any point, no matter who they are or whether they're a surrogate or not, because your title doesn't matter.
No.
So I think it's just remembering those things and just having that kind of education behind you so that you are prepared for what could happen. But even with that, like I said, I don't think with all that hindsight, you know, she wouldn't, I don't think she'd go back. I mean, I can imagine myself, like if I was a baby, I'd be like, you know, so we need to stop this guilt thing. Like you should not be guilty.
Yes, we do. It's you know, it's an epidemic.
It actually is. The guilt thing is so prevalent. It's a proper disease, this guilt thing. But you know, I think it's just sort of moving past that and kind of understanding that you'd do the same thing if you physically could for someone else and your body, you know, dealt with it well. Like you would because you want to do that for that person, and you wouldn't want them to feel guilty if you suffered through it. You'd want them to just love you, you know. So I think that's kind of how we get through these things. But yes, the guilt is real.
yeah, absolutely, because we're good people, right? You know.
Well, I'll link your book down below so people can also have a look at that as well. But yeah, it's an odd thing to have occurred when you know, you're trying for this baby, someone's offered you this amazing gift, and then something happens that kind of rocks all of your worlds.
Yeah, and I don't think that you can really prepare for it as much as we do try to. And I remember my pregnancy with Sophie was affected, not that I'd ever been pregnant before, but it was affected because I knew the reality now. I knew that just those 2 lines on a stick didn't mean a baby, you know. And it's interesting. Like I was listening to, I'm going to show my taste in TV now. So I was watching an episode of Chesapeake Shores, and spoiler alert, if you haven't watched the final episode.
I have watched it. I've watched a few episodes, but I haven't watched all of it, but I'm aware of the show you're talking about.
Yes. And so at the end, one of the couples, like they had gotten pregnant, and they said at the end, like before, like they'd only just found out, they announced it to all of their family, and they said, we're having a baby. And I thought in that moment, I had never referred to any of our pregnancies as we are having a baby. It was always, so I took a test and it turned positive. It was even hard just to say I am pregnant, because for a lot of us, just seeing those 2 lines in a pregnancy test don't equal automatically, freely, without worry, a baby. So it is a form of grief that we go through, and pregnancy after infertility or loss is really hard. Even just verbalizing it, even just announcing it does change things so much. And I think that there does need to be a lot more support out there as well, because when you do suffer a loss, the thought of getting pregnant is exciting yet terrifying at the same time, because you are rewalking a previous path of grief and trauma, and you would know that yourself. It's like this symbiotic relationship of every milestone that you reach is a reminder of a milestone that you didn't reach in a previous pregnancy. So it's like this, it's complicated, and that's what I say all the time. It is complicated. It's this feeling of joy and excitement, but fear and grief at the same time.
Yeah, it's a reliving. You're reliving it every day when you're pregnant again after a loss, or even with a surrogacy loss, like any kind of loss in that form, you're reliving it. You're pregnant. You're dealing with that. I have obviously I'm 21 weeks right now, so for me, I'm just like, I'm pregnant. I have the baby. But when I was lying on that table yesterday in getting my scan, I felt numb. I was like, I saw the baby and it was like, okay. And there was a little bit of relief, but then the rest of it was just like, well, I don't know if I'm going to hold that baby, because I've talked to enough women to know there's no guarantee. Just because the baby's there at 21 weeks does not mean it's going to be there in 10 weeks or even a week or even a couple of days or, come the due date. I could even go all the way to due date and then have not a loud baby.
Yeah, and it's sad. It's kind of unfair, because we do lose that innocence of that joyful, carefree, like it's like love. You fall in love and you've never had your heart broken before, and you just kind of like, you put it out there and you fall hard. And if you've had your heart broken before, you do guard it a little bit, and there's nothing wrong with guarding your heart a little bit. It's your brain's way of trying to protect you, because it has been there before. And and it is hard to lean into that hope and make those purchases, or start a registry, or even announce your pregnancy, or have a baby shower, all of those things that you crave because you feel like your baby does deserve it. It deserves to be celebrated, but also you deserve to be able to protect yourself and your own mental health at the same time. It's not one or the other. It's both at the same time. And I think that we struggle a lot because we punish ourselves. We say to ourselves, I should be able to feel more hopeful now. I should be able to find some joy. I should be able to announce my pregnancy. I should be able to say, we're having a baby. But it's really hard. And I think that we need to give ourselves a whole lot of grace for the path that we are walking down, because pregnancy after loss, it's not the same as pregnancy. It is different. And trying to fight and struggle to feel a certain way, that's really hard, and it comes the guilt, like it's there, it's there, it's ever present. So I think it's about trying to find little moments of joy and little moments of hope. And I always talk about hope in Your Pregnancy Haven with our community as it isn't always that big roaring, I am hopeful, we're having a baby. Like it's not always that. Sometimes it's that little voice, that little moment where you can picture holding your baby, or you catch your language and you talk about when, the baby comes along, not if the baby comes along. And it's just those little slight things that kind of creep in, and all of a sudden, you're imagining like what the nursery might look like, that, just that little moment before your brain switches into gear and goes, no, don't have that hope. Like it's those little moments that you can lean into. I always talk about it. It's like this wave of hope. Like if you're in your ultrasound appointment and all of a sudden you're feeling hopeful, you ride that wave of hope to the shore. Like, you do all of the things that you can be doing. Like, if you're feeling brave, then as soon as you get out of that appointment, you can put your ultrasound picture on the fridge. You can make a little purchase of just a little token baby thing, or you can tell one person that you're pregnant. Just those little moments. And I always talk about celebrating these milestones as well, because we don't get a lot of good news a lot of the time.
I really hope you enjoyed the first part of this podcast. If you'd like to listen to the rest, please visit thejoyofsunflowers.com. Please note that all speakers, including experts and professionals, express information, views, and opinions that should not be used to diagnose, treat, cure, or prevent any medical conditions. If you have a medical issue, please consult a qualified professional. Speakers voice their own views, opinions, and conclusions, and they may not reflect the views, opinions, and conclusions of other speakers. Ella Rose, The Joy of Sunflowers, and its sponsors may not endorse all or any of the views, opinions, or conclusions expressed.